The Crash Course Live is presented by
Smash It Demolition Derby, who host Bash for Cash, Blizzard Bash, and Capital City Carnage. Online at smashitderby.com. And Stirring Dirt Racing, host of Maymania's team show at the Golden Spike Arena in Ogden, Utah. Online at stirringdirtracing.com.
Reckless Abandon Derby Apparel and Derby Inc. Magazine. This is the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast, recorded live at the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast. Excited to have you along for the ride with us tonight. It should be an interesting one if everything works out the way that it was supposed to. I looked back at my messages. I traded some messages with Brian earlier today to tell him that we were just check his availability for this evening. It's been a bit of a crazy week here, so we'll dive into that here in a moment for episode number 381. But this is an opportunity for you guys to get involved. I went back and I asked Brian if he was available tonight, and then I went to double check studio time in the group message with Jim here at Finger Lakes 1 and with Brian. And as I went back to look here, as I was peering out the window, watching the snow begin to accumulate outside, and my car is the only one of the parking lot of the Finger Lakes 1 studios, I realized that the group message, Brian wasn't in it. It was just a message directly to Jim. So I'm not even sure if Brian knows that we are on the air right now, other than perhaps if he were to be looking at the Crash Course page itself. Nonetheless, we usually try and spend the last couple of weeks of the year looking back at what the year was and what the year brought to us, what the goods were, the bad, and all things in between. And my memory was jogged a little bit this week when on the Northeast Demolition Derby page, Dave Barlow and some other folks were talking a little bit about trying to remember the tribute night over at the Otsego County Fair in Morris, the night that everybody drove the cars that were yellow, and there was like 85 cars registered with 33R on it. And we were trying to get in touch with Jake Sherman, who sent a message out to Josh Buell. Richie Predmore was another one of the drivers that we had reached out to. Things just weren't coming together. And then as, you know, just schedule-wise and when messages were seen and things of that nature. So when all of those parts and pieces started to align that way, the plans were further wrenched a little bit with Kelsey being sick on Monday and Tuesday. She's got a pretty nasty bout of hand, foot, and mouth. So she hasn't been at school all week. So this week, it's almost fitting that I made the oversight of putting the group message in the wrong place. Then again, who knows if somebody got a deer or something, Brian could be wrapped up with that as well. Also, there's always the chance that he got ordered. So nonetheless, we tried to spend a little bit of time looking back at what the year was and what the year was supposed to be and what the year brought us. And I wanted to open the floor first off because we were here on a Wednesday night, atypical night. To all the folks that tune in and hang out with us on a regular basis, there's Matt Evans checking in. Matt, thanks a lot for the support. He supported Waterloo Middle School's trip to Boston. Hopefully that all was able to get off the ground with everything as it develops, but it was very bizarre to be able to drop off 4 boxes of pizzas to a local pizza shop so that Matt could stick them in the freezer before he brought them on home. But that was very generous, and we sure do appreciate that. What the year was and what we set out to accomplish through the course of the year. I wanted to hear from you guys, all the folks that listen. What questions did you have? What did you see out of the year? What did you think? I'm not anticipating being here for the full hour at this point. We do have some stuff that we got to tend to back at home. Eric Remington checking in. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Need to get together sometime. Yes, we do, Eric. Absolutely. Jake Sherman tonight, he was going to be wrapped up with some of his some prior engagements, I guess is the best way to say it. He still has that party that was going to be happening. A bunch of promoters and stuff were getting together. I wanted to hear a little bit on how that went. I like what was happening in New York as a whole. The Derby world has certainly changed. The paradigm has shifted, if you will, as more and more standalone shows continue to draw attention and continue to sort of dominate the landscape. You know, many of the fairs that we had expected to see had canceled early on. Some of them still got off the ground, but the car counts just weren't what we maybe had expected them to be in New York. But the standalone shows seem to be doing very well, and that's kind of the discussion that we've had a bunch of different times now. Is you've got to make sure that the drivers are supporting the shows that are worth it, so to say. A couple trips to different county fairs and stuff through the course of the year. That continues to show that they're still stuck in their ways, so to say, and not necessarily. Cody Kepner asking what's going on. Right now, just talking to you guys, trying to see where you guys are at. Feel free to fire any questions in. We'll see if we can kick off some conversation, some dialogue back and forth, work back and forth with you guys. I'm speaking in sweeping generalizations here, but you look at the standalone shows that have been so successful this year, and so even in the wake of the boosted car counts for county fairs in New York, as a number of the fairs had come back, I think that's probably the thing that has left the biggest mark on me is the way that shows were, I guess, falling off, and things were not happening a year ago. And as things came back, kind of the number of conversations we had with Frankie Guy with what they were doing, it gave drivers the opportunity to venture out and see the way things should rightly be done. You know, we talk about all the stuff that's happening with Smash It. We talk about the stuff with Frankie Guy. We talk about the stuff with Josh and Jeremy. Jeremy had and Buell. Jeremy had a birthday this week. Happy birthday to Jeremy Gully. All the stuff that they've been doing and working so hard to get the attention off of maybe the county fairs, not so much off the county fairs, but put the attention on drivers and treating drivers the right way, and maybe breaking away from some of those county fair type events and try and bring things to the next level. You know, Smith Metalworks has had those discussions, and they've been able to develop parts that can be used at your county fair level. But that also gives drivers, they get that, and then they start having other conversations. They travel down to get this stuff, and they hear about all the other derbies. And that's what really the mark that 2021 had on it, I think, just right off the top, was that from 2020, drivers started to travel, and they continued to travel. You look at how much Western New York, how much time they spent in Western Pennsylvania and in Maryland and in Virginia. It was really cool to see all of those drivers that for so long we've had these personal conversations and personal relationships with, especially in our travels out there to Dunkirk with what they do with the Lake Erie Rumble, which is the standalone show out there, and then also the county fair, which didn't happen again this year. So many of those conversations, same thing with Guy Raymond, another good example there. So many of those conversations that involve talking to those drivers and saying, it's not as hard to venture out of town. You've got the benefit of not knowing everybody, so you can go hit whoever you want. You're not going to necessarily worry about having issues when you get back to the pits the way that you might have at home. And they took that opportunity. You saw the Lanans branching out. You saw some of the Robinsons were venturing out. We knew that it was only a matter of time before the McNeils, Gabs, was going to get out there and start making waves, and she was able to do that. Eddie Stop 22, Eddie Palak and his boy, they went out and they made some noise, venturing out from this part of the woods, running in youth shows and running in full-size stuff. So you put that side by side with the mark that was left by that youth program that Smith Metalworks put together. It was really cool to see the growth of the sport in terms of the standalone stuff and the fact that the sport's looking very healthy. For me personally, I want to dive into more of this when Brian is actually here and able to hang out with us a little bit. I see the chat starting to fill up, so I'm going to go dive in there, and we'll see what's going on along those lines. This year was really we had some really grand plans of trying to get back into the streaming seat, and we had a couple opportunities here and there that didn't quite align the way that we wanted it to, and then we had that great opportunity down there at the Iron City Nationals, and the internet just wasn't what it needed to be in order to carry the heft, and we had a lot of soul searching to be done. We had a lot of questions to ask ourselves, and a lot of questions that we couldn't answer very well. Why was it working when we were on our hotspot? Was it just different time, different whatever? And it was really, really disappointing to have it fall on its face the way that it did. I did not want that to be our return, and that might be one of the reasons why you didn't hear a whole lot about it, because we just didn't know. We knew the internet was rocky down there. The one thing that I didn't do was get in the car and drive down to Stoneboro and turn something on and see what we could do myself, and I really regret that. Probably we'll get into more of that when Brian gets here in person. We've got some notes and stuff popping in here in the live chat. Dylan Goodwin, birthday on the 26th. Christy saying, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to Christy. Al Crockett, Toast Rules came out last night. Cody Kepner, that's cool. Daytona is next weekend. That's right. I forgot about that. We are going to have we're going to try to have those guys on the show next Monday. I know it's been absolutely bonkers down there for them. So going into their show, we usually have that final interview into the run-up, the go-home episode, so to say, for the Battle at Daytona. So that is something that we have sort of in our back pocket for next week. So we won't be diving too much into that quite yet. Christy Germain checking in here. We've convinced a lot of Canadians to finally travel. Hopefully we'll be an invasion at the Bash this year. 40-plus registered. Can't wait for them to get the experience of their first U.S. show. And it's good to hear. It's good to hear that it's not so tough to get over the border and bring in a Derby car. Sometimes it gets a little questionable when you're moving back and forth across the border with those dirt modifieds. So, in any case, making sure we don't have any problems on YouTube. Everything looks good there. And Hitman checking in with the Merry Christmas wishes. Great to see a bunch of different people at the Bash. This is Cody Kepner, T-Bone, Oskaloosa, Iowa, two-man team derby, and Dylan. That was a good show this year. Wait, time out. I'm still stuck on Coke Racing. That was the Turkey Derby. I'm not 100% sure if the T-Bone show happened in Oskaloosa this year. Trying to think back on it. It was one of those years where it was a little tough to keep track with everything. I was very grateful for our relationship with Mark Elliott and the Unified Point Series. That was really something that, in hindsight, I was pretty proud of. Watching the drivers as they moved up and down the list, the effort that Steven Sickles was able to put out there to come up with a win, the youth movement with 3 of the youth drivers ranking in the top 10 among all those drivers, it was really, really cool to see. That was a lot of fun. It also kept us informed of where all the biggest shows in the country were week to week, which was fun to be able to see all these drivers traveling all over the place. It was essentially the NASCAR tour with all those drivers just putting in so much effort and so many miles. But on top of that, it made sure that we had content that we could follow up with week in and week out. So that was certainly fun. But on top of that, we got the blessing early on in 2021 to branch out and put together the virtual Unified Point Series, working with Jesse Myers and the Realistic Derby Project. Nick King was involved with that. He had some preliminary conversations before we jumped in with a really well-mapped-out plan and a strategy and everything. We were able to take that, and it ended up being, I think there ended up 18 shows out of originally 27 that were scheduled. The month of July, we learned, was not the month to try to schedule online derbies. Everybody's outside working on cars, running cars, doing derbies in their home areas. So I think the entirety of the month of July was wiped out. I don't think anything got off the ground, and we did try to work with everybody. In terms of rescheduling that stuff, Brandon Dobrats ended up winning that championship with a similar effort to mirror that of Steven Sickles. He didn't have nearly the miles or nearly the investment in cars, but still it was nip and tuck for second through fifth. We ended up paying out a total of, I think it was $700 in prize money to the top 5 finishers, which was fun. Hitman ended up getting the 4th place spot on the tiebreaker. So that was really cool. He's hanging out there in the chat, like I said. So it was really neat. Again, if there's anything that you guys ever want to think about, want to throw out there, want to run by us as a question, it would certainly be appreciated. We'd be happy to go back and forth with that. Cody Kepner said the virtual point series was a great deal. Frankie Guy, I want to have Frankie Guy on the show, right? I want to wait for him to finish all of his announcements because every couple of days it seems like there's another big thing happening in terms of the hardcore world. And Frankie Guy, thankfully, still with us. That was still one of the oddest exchanges on Facebook that I think that I've seen, with everybody kind of thinking that picture of Frankie was him riding off into the sunset, much the way of Dale Earnhardt after he had passed and the trailer was pulling out of Daytona. So thankfully Frankie's still here, and he's certainly making waves with hardcore. Looking forward to a very, very busy 2022 season. Impact adding a ton of derbies to the schedule. We're really catching up with Jake Sherman here. in the coming weeks, not tonight, but in the coming weeks, to talk a little bit about what's going on with Road Rage. There's also some other news going on with Kings of Old School, so we'll be diving into that a little bit in the coming weeks. So there's lots of stuff to look forward to as we work through the opening stages of January and early February 2022. We'll be catching up with Mark Elliott to talk a little bit more about what's going on with his schedule. I mean, it's amazing to me that the schedule wrapped up the first week of December and is going to start about 4 weeks later. The 2022 season officially kicks off December 31st this month with the Battle at Daytona. So that's going to be really interesting to see. The fact that the season didn't even I don't know how to say it. It didn't even end in the calendar year. It's going to end and start in the same calendar year within 4 weeks of each other. So that's pretty neat. Frankie Guy, he just keeps coming up with new stuff. Jody Gully, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Jody. I mean, that's another big spot that I know that Brian wanted to be here to be part of as we look back on the year and what that has brought to us. There's been a lot of loss this year, and certainly keeping the Gully family in our minds as to what this year is going to be like around the holidays. I know Brian, he's shared a couple of posts online about where he's at with losing his mom, so that certainly has been something that's on my mind and something that I know he's going to have some thoughts on, so we'll probably hang on to that until we get back here next week to go into that a little bit more. Cody Kepner, new team coming this season. Oh boy. Have a good group of folks looking to go out and win some virtual unified point shows. So Cody Kepner, he's looking to get into the throwing his hat into the ring for the overall virtual unified point series stuff with the Realistic Derby project. So Frankie Guy, he's got all sorts of stuff that keeps coming out. We were talking about Impact, looking at 40 shows. Frankie's going to be real busy this year. And I like what they're doing with having each event having a name again this year. It just makes it a little bit more special. When the standalone stuff, it's not just hardcore at whatever city. There's a theme. They're going to have that Youth World Championship deal that they've got. There's more stuff coming down the line that we got to catch up with Jeffy on. Once everything is finalized, Smith Metalworks has some stuff that they're working on for in April. That's another cool thing that happened this year. We've had a bunch of derby parties. Iowa's had their derby parties. We've had our own with New Year's Eve. Brett had the get-together in Owego and the swap meet in the parking lot prior to that. And then he brought that party back last year with the swap meet coming back. We've seen the gatherings with the Ellisons over at Paradise Speedway with their swap meets, but we never had a set Derby Expo. There was never a Derby PRI. The closest that would, for anybody that's not up to speed on that, Performance Racing Industries is the annual meeting of all walks of motorsport: drag racing, circle track, dirt track, motocross, everything from NASCAR to ARCA to late models to sprint cars. All of the new technology gets announced and revealed at PRI, and it is a huge, huge deal. It's tough to get passes to, and it's where tons and tons of marketing deals are signed. They have all sorts of rules discussions. It's just really, really cool that many different walks of motorsport get together in one place. The year that I went to that, it was in Indiana, and it was at the facility where the Colts play, is where it was, and it was just amazing to be there. So that happened here recently. But earlier this year, while we had the trade shows and stuff like that, while we had the get-togethers and the swap meets and things like that, we never really had the industry-focused stuff the way that PRI did. I think the closest we ever got to it outside of the regional gatherings was the vendors area of Blizzard Bash, because everybody that was the top flight vendors, without hurting any feelings, was there with stuff, with trailers full of stuff. And they I think the only one that was missing was Jeffy a couple different times. But I mean, Pulse and Mopar was there, Nerit was there, Ski was there, Baldwin Engines was there. There was always tons of new stuff, and that was usually where you got your first peek at the new thing that was coming down the line. It was either that, or I guess you could probably make some argument for Bash for Cash, where similar, you saw Ski, a lot of those top names that were closer to the East Coast, they would do the same thing. The big reveals were at the Memorial Day event for Smash It. This past year, we got our first taste of Derby PRI, where all the vendors came together. There was rules meetings. We had a bunch of promoters get together, and they agreed to work together on rules to try and make things work. And some of the groundwork for the Youth World Championships were laid there, where a bunch of promoters agreed to send representatives running similar rules and stuff like that. And we've got a lot of different drivers and promoters and rule makers and vendors and everything working together throughout the course of this year on the heels of that, which it helps follow in line that vein, that path that was sort of initially open when the conversation started with the point series, with Mark Elliott's point series. So you look at the evolution of that and how far it's come. I mean, if you can imagine, if you could rewind, it wouldn't have to go far. Rewind 10 years, definitely 20 years, definitely 15, 20 years, which is going to put us back into the early 2000s, mid 2000s. I don't know if you're going to see a whole lot of promoters looking at other rule books and saying, hey, if we can make this the same, we are going to be able to get more cars. Instead, it's going to be nuances and little twists and little changes. So you might be able to get the car, but you're making the assumption that the driver is going to want to fix that, or that they're going to want to make those changes. And sometimes the changes that are made, it compromises the integrity of a car as a whole. So it's a whole lot easier to just bypass than it is to make those changes in terms of somebody who's a builder, somebody who owns a car. But things have changed dramatically now with where things are at. When you look at rules being borrowed with consent and applied so that people can travel significant distances and be part of major shows using a car that they potentially already have. And I think that is going to continue to help, as we said a little bit earlier. It's going to continue to help benefit the sport as a whole. It's going to continue to benefit the health of the sport. And it's going to continue to benefit the future of the sport. I've always been a proponent that you're going to catch more flies with honey than you are with salt. And by getting more and more people working together, it's continue to make that Derby world smaller. And that's only for the benefit. I saw we were talking about making the world smaller. Track Shot is going to be making the trip out to California, which is awesome. I mean, to be able to stream a Derby from California, the last West Coast Derby that I'm intimately familiar with was one of the Kitsap shows that Demolition Derby League streamed. And this is going way back. I mean, we're talking back 2015, 2014, 2013, somewhere in there. Hasn't been a lot of prominent, high visibility live streaming stuff that's been going on out there. So I was glad to see that is something else that's forthcoming. And, that sort of builds on one of the conversations that we touched on earlier. Again, I don't want to dive into that fully without Brian being here. So I'm not going to go charging into it headlong, but, it's something that we've talked about here privately behind the scenes, wanting to get back into that streaming thing. And there are some opportunities that came about this year that we can go into here. Oh, there's been a couple more things popping into the live chat. I don't want to miss that. Frankie Guy. Dylan. Dylan, you confuse me sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Your messages really have me thrown off sometimes. I'm not sure if you're just mentioning things that I'm mentioning or what might be the case. But this year was a lot of fun, being able to get out and work a little bit more with Derby tees. Obviously, the Derby Nation stuff in Topeka is always fun. Being able to get back out to Blizzard Bash for Blizzard Bash 2.0. It was the 12th running of Blizzard Bash. It was the return to Topeka. It was the combined Capital City Carnage and Blizzard Bash events. There was quite a bit of Derby action going on. And if I remember correctly, I think it was, I can't remember who was telling me that the hotel at the Stormont Vale Event Center sold out in about 45 minutes for the spring. So that's that's always fun. Getting back out to those shows was awesome. Being able to see everybody, and hopefully everybody made it through it, safe and sound. You know what I'm talking about. Hopefully everybody made it through. But it was great to see everyone get back out there and be part of that. That's really something that was a lot of fun. I mean, got to see Chris Grainer and Steve and George and Mark on the production side of things, Nate and Tony, but also to be able to see where things were at, whether the Imperials came back. I mean, those are cars that here in New York we grew up on, and there were some people that were building those cars that had never even built them before. They've never even seen them before. it was exciting to see Hoffmeisters and the Imperial. And as I understood it, as the weekend went on, there was a test Imperial that was built and run, and sort of do a little bit of the R&D stuff, which was, I mean, you don't build one without testing one first, but it's just neat to think about an Imperial being tested in today's atmosphere. We've seen the throwaway cars become viable again with the Cadillacs, and we've seen the new tricks, new style tricks being applied to the old iron, and what it can do to the Buick 225s, and what it can do to the roundbacks, and what you can do with a Cadillac now when you start doing those kinds of things. And then some of those tricks then being applied to the full frame Imperial or the subframe Imperial and stuff. It was just that was something that was really fun to see, and bringing that back and proving that those cars weren't the dominant behemoths that they were in stock style shows years and years ago, and maybe they've been unnecessarily banned for a long time, which has left us to have some of them now, but at the same time they're cars that aren't necessarily impossible to compete against. So that's hopefully that'll open things up a little bit, or maybe they'll see that the cars, they just weren't what they needed to be, and in a couple of years we're not going to see any Imperials at Blizzard Bash, not because they're outlawed, just because people would rather drive the new style Fords than the Cadillacs. But that's a different conversation for another time. But getting back to working with Derby tees, it was a lot of fun to go to Bash for Cash this year and get the chance to be on the air with Steve at that show. But that ended up turning into an invite to go the 4th of July, and that was a challenge. It was a challenge to make sure that everything fit for summer school and everything, but it was still fun to get out there, and new venue, working with a new promoter, and all the stuff that the Woods were working on and putting together, getting Jegs involved with the show, the trophies, and just the running the twin rings. They never really got the chance to use that to full effect, and the running against cars with particular color pillars so that they knew who they were going to be trying to eliminate so that they could advance on. So the heat within the heat, so to say, the whole element of that, and being able to go there and work with those guys and really be embedded with that production team for a couple of days was something I look back on in 2021 as something that was really exciting. It was a lot of fun. Let's see. Well, there we go. We got a few more comments popping in. Definitely getting closer on the rules thing. Frankie Guy says, yeah. Richard Aldridge. Christy, enjoyed working with the crew at Bash for Cash on track. This episode is being brought to you by Jeffy's Fab Farm. Excited. Another thing that we want to touch on is we're going to be working on a new deal at the first of the year with Corey Relier. So we'll be hearing a little bit more about some products and stuff that are going to be part of the show for the duration of the 2022 season kind of deal, January through December with him, Jeffy's Fab Farm. We finalized that deal, so you'll be hearing about Jeffy's program as it develops. We're going to be having some more elements of the ad and stuff that's going to be running here on a regular basis, so I'm excited about that moving forward into 2022. The Fab Farm online, jeffysfabfarm.com. Check out the virtual store and order now. Recognized as an industry leader in all manner of purpose-built demolition derby parts, starting with rear ends in 06. Jeffy's Fab Farm expanded to headers in 08, and the shop can boast a combined 70-plus years of mechanical skill. The Fab Farm specializes in outlets, conversions, and conversion components with consistent feature wins across North America. Your turnkey solution is only a phone call away. And ask about the multi-fit shifter options. You can also find fuel and air parts, suspension and transmission items, steering components, pedals, switches, and gauges if you need it. It's on the farm, jeffysfabfarm.com. And then we were also talking about Smith Metalworks. A moment ago, Smith Metalworks is an all-purpose fabrication shop that has taken the Northeast by storm. They feature more than 40 years of combined metalworking experience. The hallmark of the product line is the pointed and flat front bumpers, and then you can't overlook that super stock front bumper. That was really something that Brian fell in love with when he had the chance to run that. It can be stuffed or run hollow. You can narrow it up to fit on your compacts as well. Other items include Crown Vic door skins, battery boxes, engine mounting systems, pedal combos, and shifters. The shop offers all the odds and ends, such as distributor, clamps, and weld-in centers. Be sure to ask about their GM floor liners, in-person locations in Mercer, Uniontown, Bethlehem, online, smithmetalworks.info. And Smash It Demolition Derby. Stay up to date with everything that's going on with Smash It. They've got rules. They've got Bash for Cash news up there as well, talking a little bit about the different divisions that have seen some facelifts. The program has been changed a little bit for this year. So that's something that you're going to want to get up to speed on. We'll be talking with those guys a little bit. I got to know, that's another thing that happened this year, is getting to know some new people, be it just through Derby or some of the extracurriculars outside of it. Tim Jr., I got to know him a little bit with just by trading text messages and talking about Demolition Derby from a different perspective. Tim hasn't been immersed in the sport the way that so many of us have for so long, and he's coming to it with a different perspective. And that's one of the things that when we first came to the table, we were trying to find room at the bar and figure out where Crash Course fit, where Smashed Empire Films fit back in 2010, 2011. Find where Crash Course fit in 2013, 2014, when we were traveling all over the place. And the stuff that I knew from Circle Track, from working on dirt tracks, from working at World of Outlaws, from working at Outlaw Speedway, it was Black Rock Speedway then, from working with Dirt Car and in the 358 Modified Series, from working with the Patriot Sprint Tour, you learn a lot that the stuff that's in the books isn't always the way that it actually works. And you're also quickly educated that the way people think in motorsports is different than the way people think in other walks of business. And it was a little bit tough to kind of find our footing there for a while. I mean, Josh and I used to butt heads all the time because we had differing opinions and differing philosophies on how to move forward. What is the best way to move this forward? What is the best way to make this product something that people are going to gravitate to in the long term? How is this going to be sustainable? And I didn't think that I've never been one to be overly aggressive, and Josh was ready to get out there. And that was one of the reasons why we worked so well together. It was the yin and the yang, so to say. We were able to balance each other out. He'd be able to pull me outside my comfort zone and get me to be a little bit more bold, and I was able to kind of meter him back. And he had a birthday here. I don't think we've been on since he had his birthday, so happy birthday out to Josh. And we were able to trade some messages, and looked like he's got a budding doctor in the family too. I don't know if you noticed that. I was catching him just as he was going into a doctor's appointment, so we weren't able to connect, but certainly well wishes out to Josh. And think back on those days we were traveling together and everything. I think back on them fondly, not necessarily comfortably, but but definitely fondly. And being able to have those conversations with Tim that necessarily weren't had with us, and talk about the differences between what they might tell you in working in Major League Baseball versus working in Major League Demolition Derby are two very different worlds, and some of the ideas he's brought to the table. Just finished a car for him, actually. That's another avenue that was able to get to know him a little bit and get to know Fatty a little bit better, was through the video game, through Realistic Derby Project and playing Beam MP, I can't believe I did that, Beam NG, and playing that game and talking with them through Discord and getting to know some different people. Another one that comes to mind through the course of that, the car that I just did for Tim Jr. was a model of Rusty Wallace's car. I want to touch it up a little bit more. It was a model of I think it was the 1998 Taurus that Rusty Wallace drove for Penske. It was a Miller Lite number 2, but we changed everything up and used all the same types of fonts and made a Smash It car. It has his number on the side, so it was kind of neat. It was fun. There's some things, like I said, that I want to tweak on still, but all intents and purposes, if you see a number 125 that looks like it might be a Rusty Wallace Miller car with a white nose and blue body, it's probably Tim Jr. Kelby Miners comes to mind as well. Kelby's another one that I've gotten to know a little bit, who really wasn't in any of our overlapping orbits, so to say. To get to know him a little bit more was certainly rewarding. It's a neat guy to talk to. I was able to walk up to him and have a conversation in person at Blizzard Bash this year, but we've had conversations on through Discord and stuff, just talking about things that aren't necessarily solely Demolition Derby. That's one of those things that I miss from being able to travel as much as we used to, be it COVID era, be it just a reduction in travel schedule as we try to rebuild everything technology-wise. First and foremost, the one that immediately comes to mind is Chris Lancaster and Dustin Anderson, those two right off the top, and Eric Moulet. Being able to get out there and talk with those guys about stuff that's not necessarily Demolition Derby. There's so many people that we've lost that opportunity to do with because the world's gotten a little bit bigger. It's gone the other way. And that's been a little bit tough, missing out on those conversations. So to be able to recapture a little bit of that with Kelby was fun, make some connections outside. Darren Brown's another one, with all sorts of conversations. It united by the Demolition Derby world, but friends with so much more substance than that. And hopefully, as we work through the holidays and you reflect back on what your 2021 was like, and you start thinking a little bit about some of those contacts that you lost, maybe if you get a little bit of time, throw a message through Facebook. Something else that I'm thinking back to just got a message from Todd Height, being able to keep in touch with him long after he had stepped away from the car. The Derby world got a little bit intense, and it was probably wise that Todd took a little bit of break from that. But Todd, I'm happy to report, for those of you who haven't had any opportunity to talk with Todd, he's doing well, and certainly somebody that I always enjoy having a conversation with. And a lot of this also is sort of brought along by the pictures that we saw on Northeast Demolition Derby. I was talking with Steve Bucknam a little bit about the pictures, and he had messaged and mentioned that was happening. Folks were just looking at pictures and reflecting on what that tribute night was like, and I sort of lost touch even with Steve in the midst of that conversation, because I got just kind of mired and looking at the pictures and remembering who was in what car and what the night was like. And Jim Beatty was out there at that Derby, and Brett and Josh, just all of it front to back. And got thinking a little bit about what 2021 was like, and instead of counting it in wins and losses and successes and failures, it just kind of was nice to be able to reconnect with a lot of people that we weren't able to do for a couple of years now. So that was certainly fun. There we go. Got some more messages popping in. Mike McCreary. I had the chance to meet Mike at Blizzard Bash. That was cool. David Soderberg, the Minnesota Wild Man, saying Merry Christmas to all. Corey Relier. Hope all the guys who do business can and should support the show. We sure do appreciate that. Scott Webster checking in. Scott had a birthday. Bo Lockwood, thanks for all we do, giving the sponsors and others sized egos a platform. That is funny. Bo, that's a good message, Bo. Hope all is well for Bo. Lee Sager, Merry Christmas to him. Tony Burkhart kept looking over the shoulder, waiting for Steve to walk through the pits Thursdays after the big hit. So Tony Burkhart, let's visit that for a minute. Tony wouldn't have been able to see us had we walked into the pit because of the dust and the dirt. It's funny that you say that. We were down there in that part of the pit area twice through the course of the weekend. And congratulations again on the hit heard around the world, so to say. The shot on the back of that Imperial, there's people that I don't even know about that were messaging, that don't even know they were messaging with videos and different angles and stuff. And that was certainly an outstanding hit at the cost of your own front steering system. But still, that was outstanding, and I do regret the fact that we didn't get a chance to get down and talk to you about that. We were at that end of the pit area twice on the cart, and between the dust and the noise and everything, we weren't going to be able to do an interview. And when we got to the pit area, it was a frantic effort over there at the MHM side of the barn. So at risk of interrupting the progress that was being done and the lengthy conversation that would result in carbon monoxide poisoning, we turned around and we split to leave you guys to do your work uninterrupted and carried on to try and make sure that we got some more of those interviews done for the production. So yes, I do apologize and regret not being able to see you down there at Blizzard Bash, but certainly don't want you to feel like that is not recognizing the effort or the hit, the effort to set a tone, so to say, to show what the Fords can do to the subframe Imperials. That was certainly neat. Another one that comes to mind, just looking back on what we were able to do. Leighton Horsley, Terry Papadopoulos checking in. I appreciate all this, guys. It's been good. If anybody's got any questions or anything that they want to remember from the year, feel free to throw it in the chat, and we'll maybe we can drum up some conversation about that here as we get close to getting a little bit closer to the wrapping up point, because I think there is some other stuff that's going on here at the studio, if I remember what Jim said correctly. And again, I apologize to Brian. I thought I had him in the group chat. I feel so bad about not having him in the group chat. I opened the wrong window there. David Guard checking in here. This is good to hear. We talked about Jeremy last week, and 9 days into a hospital stay for COVID pneumonia. And he's still there, but he's improving. That message is a great one to get right now. That is awesome. just to hear that he's improving is great, because man, it gets scary when you get put into the hospital. We had a couple of friends that are the roads have been intertwined quite a bit with Steven Ovens and Brad Ovens and Stu Ovens, be it mud bosses or derbies or circle track. Getting to watch Brad drive cars, and Stu is a proud father watching Brad winning cars. Both Stu and Brad passing about 13 days apart. Here, both of them COVID related, so it's tough to hear. So certainly, hopefully, Jeremy is in good spirits and he continues on a path to recovery. Certainly want for those messages. It's another guy that we have lost a little bit of touch with as time has moved on. Lee Sager, that's another guy. In addition to Jesse Myers and Lee Sager through the course of this year, just all the different conversations that we've had, getting to know Lee outside of Demolition Derby, and getting just an extensive education on what computer streaming is and what it takes to be a gamer, and learning the grind that is, and conversations with Jesse about computer coding and trying to drum up pictures and having discussions about what the cars need to be to help make the video game cars more realistic, and getting the chance to hang out with him a little bit. And also, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention American Means Hunter Wood, who he's probably taught me more about computers than I ever wanted to know, in terms of what the streaming stuff was that we've learned on our own, and the stuff that we've been able to do with Finger Lakes One, and the tips we've picked up from them, and then just in sort of impromptu trade meetings with Chris Grainer and Mark Klein. These conversations happen. Some folks like to draw these weird lines and put up these walls where these factions don't interact. And if it's Crash Course is here and Derby Tees is there and Track Shot is there, and like behind the scenes, we talk quite a bit. There's a lot of dialogues and conversations that happen, be it that the conversation is business related, or just because, hey, how are things going for you? It looks like that show might have been a little bit tough, or your internet was bad, or how do you get around this issue and stuff. Everybody at the end of the day, George Hideout had a great post up the other day, and I don't know if it was his or if he had borrowed it for someone else. At the end of the day, everybody, we're still just people that are trying to get by, and nobody wants to fail. To get on the soapbox a little bit here, you see all these posts about looking for roof signs and door wraps and stuff on the Northeast Derby page, and the same 5 or 6 people get tagged in it. At risk of forgetting anybody, I'll list off the ones that come up to me right off the head. Hanson's Paint, Darren Prohl, I'm blanking, out there in Utah. I've done a bunch of stuff. They have the splatter paint cars. I can picture their logo. If anybody can pull it up in chat, I can't. I cannot for the life of me come up with the name of the group in Utah that we've talked to a bunch of times. Angstrom, GH Graphics, Derby Tees, and then I do a bunch of this stuff too. And Black Flag, Corey Beal, up in Canada. We have fairly regular conversations. George and I talk probably once a week, and it doesn't even necessarily have anything to do with production stuff. We talk. So I mean, if you're looking for stuff, those are the guys that I can tell you. Those are the guys that are going to take care of you in rapid fashion. Certainly, I'll try to help anybody that I can. But if you're looking for the roof signs and stuff, those are the guys that you're going to want to go to, and those are the names you're going to continue to see over and over again. But it's not because. It's not anything where there's walls built up, where George is over here and Corey's over here. I don't have a problem with any of those guys, and I don't think they have any issues with anything that we do either. Dylan Simonton, just today, he posted asking to get a skin design for the video game on a roundback, and he got his door wraps from Mark Klein, and he got his roof sign from Corey Beal at Black Flag, and I sent messages to both of those guys saying, hey, this guy wants this thing. I'm going to try and turn it around for him. Is it okay if I use the artwork from proofs that he's got? And everybody said go for it. That's one of the things, in Demolition Derby that you used to see years ago. The promoters wouldn't work together, and then you started seeing the vendors as the specialized Derby parts crop up, and the Derby parts wouldn't work together. Broadhead, that's the one in Utah, Broadhead. I see a bunch of chats there, messages in the chat. Scott Kiefer checking in, Tony Burkhart, Dylan, Scott Kiefer, send us some stars. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. There's Broadhead right there. Justin, Scott Kiefer mentioned Justin Broadhead. Mike Hill, yeah. Lee and Horsley talking about Mike Hill. That's another great one. Hill Job Graphics. We had some conversations about doing some hats years and years ago. God, I can't remember where that is. Remember when that was. Man. In any case, he does a great job too. And there's other ones that I'm not even mentioning that are going to do just fine. You know, everybody's, I don't know. I get real frustrated when we see those walls get put up. And a long time ago, a different mindset. Yeah, that was probably the standard bearer for things. But now it's just not. You know, you see so many other promoters working together and the vendors working together and things like that. That same kind of things happening on the graphic side. People trying to work together just to make it work. Just to make it work. The world has become so small with Derby. It's really hard to kind of encapsulate everything just in 45 minutes or so that we're talking to here. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of rambled a little bit there at a moment. Like I said, I knew that I was going to be climbing upon a soapbox that is something that has been a point of contention that I see on there. And I remember when Crash Course was traveling all over the place, it was really, really frustrating to have, to have because we can never prove it. I hesitate to say, but to have people who think that they are doing good for one faction or another go into the other people's yard and cause a ruckus, whether they report videos or whether they put thumbs down or angry faces or where they go into the chats and the comments and cause issues. It's like, if you have somebody that you support, great, go support them. If you want to go check something else out and go check it out, then go check it out. But if you want to go there just to cause hate and discontent, that was Jimmy Johnson's big line. If you're going there just to cause hate and discontent, what are you doing? Just let it go. Let it go. Going back up through here, a lot of holiday wishes. Always appreciate that. 45 comments tonight. Not bad. Not bad for not really having anything planned. Again, if anybody's got any questions, comments, thoughts, or anything to reflect on, we're going to build out on this and carry on our sort of year in review a little bit more deeply next week when we get on. We're going to try and catch up with some of the folks from the Battle at Daytona as well. You know what I didn't do is I remember the Psyopas had posted earlier in the week about a gentleman who had passed from Ohio. And I don't know if I can put my hands on that real quick. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Kane Riley, there it is. Kane Riley passed away unexpectedly earlier this month. It's always a tough time to lose somebody in December like that, this close to the holidays. So certainly tough to endure that loss. And I know that there's a lot of people who, like we said, who endured that loss, and that's something that's important to Brian. So without diving too deep into that, we'll leave some meat on that bone for Brian when he's able to get back to us here next week. Just taking another quick perusal of the chat. Dylan Goodwin going to run a car in Washington, Iowa. It's a county fair in 2022. Good to see. So we got that stuff out there for everybody in the inbox. So we've got all of that stuff covered. Let's see. And I think we've covered all the bases that we wanted to for this evening. If anybody's got any final thoughts, by all means, welcome to hop in there. Otherwise, we are going to put a fork in episode number 380. Just a rare glimpse into, I guess it's a rare glimpse into how my mind works. I don't spend a lot of time putting myself out there publicly, I guess you could say. I don't spend a lot of time putting my thoughts or opinions and stuff out there. Just sort of kind of keep that stuff off the radar and try to maintain as much professionalism as possible. So hopefully this conversation tonight got a little bit more candid and helped to bring you guys inside. And certainly by all means, I want everybody to know that we sure do appreciate all the friends that we've made over the years. And I know the last 2 or 3 seasons, I know I haven't done as good a job of keeping in touch with everybody as again, the world, like I said, we always talk about how Facebook made the world smaller. the world got a little bit larger than it needed to be as everybody sort of got shuffled in their isolations, and my jobs at the school got a little bit more intensive. We weren't able to travel as much as we used to. So it's certainly something that I want to do better with as we move into 2022. And another guy that we spend a lot of time talking to that I hadn't before. And again, this is stuff that, most of the conversations with TJ McCulloch are about pro wrestling. It doesn't even have anything to do with Demolition Derby. But again, united by the universal faith of the Church of Demolition Derby, and then we end up talking about something else, and to run down the list and get to know Scott Webster a little bit better. He's a guy that I knew through Demolition Derby, the RC side of things. Kyle Homer's another one, James McLean, JYD, Nick Embry. There's all these guys that it just that same relationship and conversation got stuck into a virtual world, and it was nice to be able to get out this year to some of those derbies that we were at. I got the chance to meet Scott Prodonic in person, I think, for the first time. He's another one, kind of the same idea. Being able to get back out there and make those connections and sort of rekindle those personal relationships in person. Some of them might have been behind masks and otherwise, but still, at the same time, was able to get and see people in person and run into Dustin Anderson or Booger or Mike Worth or all the drivers that we know up and down the national bracket at Blizzard Bash or in the pit area like the Rutherfords, and so many of those drivers that we know almost exclusively from Bash for Cash. Be able to see everybody again this year is certainly something that was a topic that we're going to be coming back to when we get Brian back, because that's something that was meaningful to him as well. So I think at this point we're going to call it good. We've There's Jason Sherman. Jason, we actually tabled some of those conversations for you. By all means, you're welcome to go back and dive into it. We talked a little bit about the photo post and what that brought us to in terms of being able to reflect a little bit on what 2021 was, and I think the prevailing theme was about connecting with people and rekindling some of those relationships that we didn't have, not so much in success and failure, number of shows, wins and losses and stuff, but just what the year was and what it meant to me. That's going to do it for this one. Jake, by all means, if you can make the trip next week, you're welcome to come up and hang out with us for a little while. Hopefully, the plan that right now is we're going to be back on Monday. Hopefully everybody has recovered from their illnesses at home, and we'll be able to get back to a regular Monday schedule. We'll talk a little bit of the battle at Daytona. We'll talk a little bit about the year in review with Brian here with us too, and Jake, if you could make it, that'd be awesome. Open invitation to anybody. At this point, we got 2 empty seats. There's always space for somebody if they want to make the trip up. That is going to do it for us here on the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast. Episode number 380, 381, whatever this one was, is in the books. Hopefully everybody has a Merry Christmas. We will be with you before the new year, so we'll save that until next week. But have a Merry Christmas, safe, happy holidays. Hopefully Santa leaves everything that you want in your stocking. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for a little while here. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully you enjoyed it there in the live chat. Oh, a couple more messages popping in. We'll catch those before we head out. Doug Catilla, thanks, Doug. Leighton Horsling, going to be around Buried Alive? We don't know. Don't know what's going to happen with those right now. He says to spare everybody. I'm not sure what that was. To spare everybody, I guess. I'm not even sure what I said. But in that case, that's going to do it for us here on the Crash Course. This episode in the books. We'll see everybody back here again next week on a Monday. We'll be talking more about what 2021 was. Brian will be back, and then we'll be looking at the Battle of Daytona. We'll see you then.
Crash Course Live is presented by
Smash It Demolition Derby, who host Bash for Cash, Blizzard Bash, and Capital City Carnage. Online at smashitderby.com. And Stirring Dirt Racing, hosts of Maymania's team show at the Golden Spike Arena in Ogden, Utah. Online at stirringdirtracing.com.
Reckless Abandon Derby Apparel, and Derby Inc. Magazine. This is the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast, recorded live at the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York.